Lewis Hamilton just took his first win for Ferrari, and the data behind it should worry every other team on the grid. Look at the Barcelona telemetry, and one thing jumps out. Through the corners, the fastest car on track was the red one. Hamilton was quicker than the Mercedes. Everywhere the driver makes the difference. So how did he miss pole by 64 thousandths? Not in a corner, on the straight. And once you understand why, the question stops being how Ferrari won. It becomes what happens when that last weakness is gone. Start with the result, because the result is the part everyone already knows. On Sunday at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, Hamilton crossed the line first. His first victory in Ferrari red. His 106th in Formula 1, the first time he had won in almost 2 years, and the first win this season that did not belong to a Mercedes. At 41, he became the oldest man to win a Grand Prix in more than half a century. Behind him, George Russell and Lando Norris completed the first all-British podium the sport has seen since 1968. That is the headline. The headline is not the interesting part. The interesting part sits in a data file from the day before, because on Saturday, Hamilton did not win. He came up 64 thousandths of a second short of pole. And when the engineers pulled that lap apart, line by line, against the car that beat him, they found something that changes how you read this entire weekend. For almost the whole lap, the Ferrari was faster. Not by a little. Through the middle of the circuit, in the long, flowing corners where downforce and balance decide everything, Hamilton was pulling away from the fastest qualifier of the season. The red car was the quickest thing on track everywhere. A driver and a chassis get to make the difference. Then it reached the straight, and all of it vanished. Here is how the lap actually unfolds. Hamilton crosses the timing line, and the gap is already swinging his way. Through the first sector, he is level. Through the second sector, the technical heart of the lap, he starts taking real time. By the exit of turn 10, the trace shows him ahead by as much as 4/10ths of a second. 4/10ths. In qualifying, that is not a margin, that is a different postcode. To get there, Hamilton is doing something most drivers would not risk. He is lifting off the throttle early into the slower corners around, turns 5 and 7, backing out on purpose to scrub speed where it costs the least and save electrical energy for later in the lap. He is giving up small pieces of time deliberately, banking them, so the car has something left for the one stretch where Ferrari is exposed. It is not enough. Onto the final part of the lap, the Mercedes simply pulls. The analysts who broke the trace down put the straight line difference at somewhere between 6 and 10 kilometers an hour. That does not sound like much, until you remember how a lap time is built. Over the last 200 meters, Hamilton bleeds away everything he had banked. He loses around 2/10ths from the final corner to the line. Russell only noses in front about 100 meters before the timing beam. The final corner tells the whole story in miniature. Hamilton takes it in a higher gear, feathering the throttle, trying to protect what little energy he has left. Russell takes the same corner a gear lower, needs less of a lift, and gets back on full power a beat earlier. That one beat, multiplied down the straight, is the entire gap. 64 thousandths. That is where the pole went. Not in a corner. On the road between two corners in a straight line, where the driver is just a passenger holding the wheel. And the most telling part is who admitted it. The man who took pole, George Russell, said out loud afterwards that Hamilton should have beaten him. Toto Wolff, who runs the team that has won every race this year, said the same. When your rivals are the ones telling the world your driver was robbed by the straight, the data has stopped being an opinion. It was also Hamilton's first front row in Ferrari red, and it knocked Antonelli off pole for the first time in 5 qualifying sessions running. It was his first front row anywhere since the British Grand Prix of 2024. A full year of Saturdays spent staring at the back of faster cars, ended by a single lap the stopwatch says he should have owned outright. To understand why that lap matters this much, look back 12 months. A year ago, this whole partnership looked like a mistake. Hamilton's first season in red brought no wins and no podiums, and inside his own garage, Charles Leclerc was usually the quicker man. The story being written was that the move had come too late, that the greatest qualifier of his generation had finally lost a step. That story is finished. Coming into Barcelona, Hamilton had pulled the qualifying gap to Leclerc back to almost nothing, and on Saturday, he split the two Mercedes to put his car on the front row. Leclerc crashed out of qualifying and never finished the race, his third heavy moment in 2 weekends, with the team insisting the trouble was mechanical and situational rather than anything in his head. Either way, the contrast was stark. The driver people had written off is now the one carrying the team, and it has been building. A podium in China, back-to-back second places in Canada and Monaco. 2 podiums on tracks as different as a street fight and a flowing high-speed test, the kind of range that only shows up when a driver finally trusts the car under him. Barcelona did not come from nowhere. It was the next step on a line that has been climbing for months. Hamilton could have let that pole lap stand as a moral victory. He didn't. On Sunday, the straight that cost him on Saturday barely mattered. The pace had been there all weekend. On Friday, in the long runs that teams use to read true race pace, the Mercedes held only a tenth of a second a lap over the Ferrari, the closest the two cars had been all season. A margin that small was always going to come down to tyres, timing, and nerve. And Barcelona had all three in abundance. Midway through the race, a car rolled to a stop out on track and brought out a virtual safety car, and the timing of it would shape everything that followed. The afternoon had become a strategy fight, and Ferrari was about to win it. Barcelona served up the highest tyre wear weekend of the year, track temperatures north of 50 degrees, rubber falling away so fast that drivers were losing up to 5 seconds over 10 laps. Hamilton even said the wear was double what Ferrari had expected. On a day like that, the car that is kindest to its tyres and strongest in the corners holds the advantage, and that was the red one. Hamilton ran 3 stops to the Mercedes 2, leaning on that cornering strength. When the virtual caution came out, Ferrari timed his stop to perfection. A normal stop at Barcelona costs around 23 seconds. Under that caution, it cost him roughly 11. He came out the other side about 2 seconds ahead of Russell, and his engineer said it plainly on the radio. "And you are in front." This is where the weekend took a turn nobody in the Mercedes garage expected. Hamilton did not just hold the lead, he drove away from it. By the closing laps, the timing screens had him lapping nearly a full second quicker than Russell behind him. He won by almost 20 seconds. Russell came home 19.5 seconds back, with Norris a further 4 behind in third, and Verstappen and Piastri rounding out the top 5. Nearly a second a lap on the car that had not lost all year. Think about that for a second. You do not pull 20 seconds out of the season's benchmark on luck. The caution got him to the front. The pace kept him there. Once he was clear, the lead only grew. A little more daylight every lap, until the result stopped being in any doubt. There is a reason that pace arrived this weekend in particular. Ferrari brought their biggest upgrade of the season to Barcelona, 8 separate parts spread across the front wing. The nose, the floor, the diffuser and the side pods, all aimed at one thing: more downforce. More stability through the corners. You saw the result in the data on Saturday and on the track on Sunday. The corners are now Ferrari's playground. Hamilton had felt it coming. After qualifying, he said the team knew where their target was, and that this package was the clearest step yet toward closing the gap. A day later, the win turned that hope into proof. Inside Maranello, the read was simple. This car can win races now. And that is exactly why the qualifying data matters more than the trophy, because it points straight at the one thing still standing between Hamilton and the front of every weekend, not just the lucky one. Pay close attention to this next part, because it explains the whole season. The gap is not in the chassis. The corners proved that. It is on the straights, where the Ferrari simply runs out of power a few car lengths before the Mercedes does. That is what the final 200 meters at Barcelona were showing. The corners prove the car is quick. The straight is the one place it stops pulling a fraction too soon. If you want every race broken down through the data like this, subscribe. This channel lives in the numbers the broadcast skips past. Step back from this one weekend for a moment, because the straight line gap is not a Barcelona problem. It is a season-long signature, and it goes back further than most realize. This same track is where the warning first showed up. Back in winter testing, on this exact circuit, the early energy figures from the Ferrari were already raising eyebrows in the paddock. The trait has been there since January. Barcelona just put it on a stopwatch in front of everyone. Why can it not be fixed overnight? Because the deficit is in the engine, and an engine is not a part you can bolt on between races. Ferrari knows exactly where the gap is, and they are already chasing it. But Hamilton has put a number on it himself. By his own description, this is an 8 to 10 month job, not an 8 to 10 day one. A problem they fully understand and still cannot solve in time. Engineering does not get more frustrating than that. So Ferrari sits in an odd spot. They have a car that on Saturday was the fastest thing through every corner at one of the most punishing circuits of the year. They have a driver who, at 41, just out-qualified and outdrove the entire field on merit. And the only thing beating them is a deficit they already understand and simply cannot close yet. And that is not even the part that should worry the rest of the grid. Run the logic forward. The corners already belong to Ferrari. The driver is already operating at a level his rivals are openly calling untouchable on his day. Toto Wolff put it simply. When Hamilton feels good and has a car he likes to drive, he goes incredibly fast. Even the current cars seem to suit him, and you can see it in the way he is attacking corners again. The single missing piece is straight line energy, and it is on a clock that is already counting down. So picture the back half of the season once Ferrari has chased that engine gap down. Picture a Saturday where Hamilton is 4/10 up through the middle sector and the straight no longer hands it back. In a few months, the rest of the paddock may understand exactly what this one Saturday was trying to warn them about. The championship table is where it turns real. Antonelli still leads, and Mercedes still leads both titles comfortably, so none of this is a crisis for them yet. But Hamilton's win cut Antonelli's advantage from 66 points to 41 in a single afternoon. It also lifted Hamilton to second in the championship, the closest thing the runaway leader now has to a real threat, and the way it happened matters. Antonelli went out with an engine failure. The supposedly bulletproof Mercedes, the team that had won everything, was the one that blinked on reliability. 6 wins from the first 6 races, and then an engine that would not see the flag. For one weekend, the difference between the two cars came down to who finished, not who was quicker. Hamilton felt every bit of it on the radio. "Grazie a tutti Maranello," he said on the cool-down lap. "You helped me achieve this dream." In Parc Fermé, still catching his breath, he said they are all special in their own way, but this one is something else. To Nico Rosberg, the man who beat him to the title back in 2016, he said this was the first, he hopes, of many. On this trajectory, he may be right. Everything Ferrari is missing is a known quantity with a deadline on it. What they already have is the hard part that money cannot buy, a chassis that owns the corners. And the fastest 41-year-old the sport has ever seen, driving like a man with something to prove. For now, it all sits in a strange place. Ferrari left Barcelona with the win, the fastest car in the corners, a driver reborn, and a problem they cannot solve for the better part of a year. Every one of those things is true at the same time. This is the version of Hamilton and Ferrari the data has been pointing towards since the season started. This is not a fairy tale. It is a build, one piece at a time, with the last and hardest piece already moving behind closed doors in Maranello. The next time these numbers line up, the straight might not save anyone. This story is not finished. It is barely getting started. If you want to see where it goes from here, subscribe and ride the rest of the season out with us.